Have you ever sat and stared up at the stars and wondered, where did we come from? Let's take a journey like no other, not to a place, but to a time. Join us as we delve deep into the human past and explore our shared human origins. Welcome to the world of paleoanthropology.
Hello, everybody. This is Seth from the world of paleoanthropology with another great episode of The Story of Us, where we dive deep into the field of archaeology, anthropology, and paleoanthropology, where we meet some of the most interesting, fascinating, and important people in the field who have contributed so much. Today, we have another special guest, and I will hand it over so that she can introduce herself.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the show. Thanks so much, Seth, for having me. I am so excited. My name is Annlin Matabane. I am the founder and director of Reach Archaeology Consulting. We are a specialist archaeological cultural heritage resources management consulting agency, and we specialize in the relocation of human remains and burial grounds and graves.
That sounds like very important work, which I want to get into a little bit later on what it is and what work you do, because it sounds, like I said, pretty critical to what's going on in your area. But I want to talk about you a little bit first and just your interest in leading up to where you are now. So, what got you first interested in archaeology? What led to this?
So yeah, thanks for that question. My journey kind of started in university. I actually didn't have a 10-year plan, 5-year plan kind of mapped out. And I kind of stumbled into archaeology and I fell in love. I found myself attending a lecture with a friend of mine, an anthropology lecture. And one of the first lectures was a guest lecture from Dr. Kerry Ashley. And she was presenting on the origins of language. And she was talking about how language, emanates, rather the dispersion of language emanates from the dispersion of people across the world from a scientific theory called the Out of Africa theory. And I found myself completely encapsulated by that. And a few weeks later, I had completely changed my course, and I then went on to major in archaeology in my undergraduate, as well as physical geography as another passion. And then I completed my undergraduate, and then went on to do my postgraduate, and then shortly after that, I started my master's program, and then found myself exposed to this world of the private sector of archaeology. And that really opened my eyes to a lot of the opportunities in the country for not just specialists in the field, but I got to really appreciate kind of all the different elements that make up this industry. It's quite diverse, and but I noticed the lack of representation. I noticed that a lot of the people standing in front of me, through all these years, I mean, I spent 10 years in university, they didn't look like me. And I couldn't necessarily always kind of connect with them. And I wondered, who else is having this experience? And then I started delving into specialist studies around repatriations when I joined an internship program at one of the top heritage consulting agencies in the country at the time, and that really set the tone for me. I knew that this is a place where I belong, And I felt called into the space. I felt a genuine ancestral call to say, to heal. A lot of the graves and the human remains that are scattered across this land are really connected to a very painful South African history of liberation and struggle. And I found myself needing to to remain in that space. And so that's kind of just a little bit on how I ended up here. But
Right.
that's kind of where it began.
I think, a lot of the people I talk to, they get into what they do out of a passion or want to do something. But I think your reason for doing what you do, as you said, this ancestral calling, it sounds so much more powerful than a lot of the reasons that I hear. And it makes me very happy to hear that you found that for yourself, that you found that connection that you can have with your ancestors and the land and, that healing that you mentioned. So, if I understand it correctly, as you mentioned, the people didn't look like you. And like I said, if I'm correct in the research that I've done, you were the first that represented someone that looked like you in that field. What did that mean to you? And what did it mean for the field?
Perhaps I should give a little bit of context around what was happening at the time in South Africa with affirmative
Yes,
action and the Black Economic Empowerment Acts that were being
absolutely.
enacted at the time. But what it authentically came down to was that for a long time we have been underrepresented, undermined, and in spaces that affect us, right? And I've always been of the stance that you can't do something about us without us. So
Hmm.
being excluded from connecting and recognizing that women in the cultural heritage resources management sector aren't capacitated. We have so many women in the sector that are not necessarily in consulting because of many elements that affect why. Because of the culture of the industry, it's been historically male dominated, and also just the history of archaeology, right? Coming from an industry that's been steeped with such negativity, with grave robbing, and with enthusiasts that have their metal detectors and essentially just are glorified thieves, I guess. And
Right.
so being African and understanding that as an African woman there is a responsibility, and there's an empathy that you need to acknowledge when you enter cultural spaces, because there's an Africanism around how you communicate with communities and also how you connect. So in our field, women have historically kind of come into the field and faced all these adverse effects of being in this industry and kind of withdrawn because there's been a lack of support from our male counterparts. There's also been a lack of understanding of the role of women in this industry. So a big, it, for me, it just meant that transformation is 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 happening. It's being actualized, right? And that archaeology cannot be left behind, and especially in a developing country like South Africa, especially in a country that's that has very little voices of people telling our stories in our languages and in our spaces and connecting with those. So it really just meant it means what it means for me in 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 layman's terms. I think it means that what was in the dark is now come to light. We live in such a digital age that you cannot necessarily hide.
Right.
You try, but if we we will Google you and we will find you. So for us as well, I realized that there is an awakening of society, and people are aware of what is taking place, but there is no call to act. And I took it upon myself to say, if I start, if you build it, maybe they will come, right?
Right.
And it's just been a support support kind of function for a long time for women in the sector, because we've played that role to support the males leading the pack. And I thought it's about time for some change.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
to have male counterparts in my industry to support me and to support my vision and the mission that we have has just been incredible. So yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, it sounds like it. That's absolutely, being a person of that causes change in a positive way, is such a good thing. And we need more people that are doing that are taking things into their own hands, saying, change is needed. We need to do this. Let's do it. And I think you're a great example of someone who's done that. So now that we know kind of a little bit more about where you come from and where you are, what are you working on right now?
So currently, I am actually I've got one kind of slower paced grave relocation project. It's one of our bigger projects that we've undertaken. And then in a more outside of my business,
Hmm.
I'm really working on trying to get some of my experiences published in some kind of recorded document, right? Either an article or a journal or a publication of some sort that could kind of shed light, a little bit more light into the experiences of Black women in this sector, and just my own personal experience of what I have been through and what I've witnessed and what I've seen and what's occurred in the past 3-4 years, and what's happened in the past 10 years. I mean, I've been in this industry for almost 14 years, I think. So um, yeah, the plans that are in the pipeline include some um, prospecting changes for myself personally. I'm making a bit of a shift in my business life. I'm trying to find a bit more balance, work-life balance, and it might mean making some big changes and maybe stepping into a new role in
Hmm.
terms of the business. I won't necessarily be, at the fore. I will kind of try to take a step back. It's been a bit hectic right now, but also in our business right now, we're looking to have some new. We're taking on some new faces. So we're bringing on a few interns and some volunteers who's going to assist us in our mission to look at transforming the sector. And then we're going to be doing some research. So we're looking to put on some research grants from from various heritage authorities and councils, and we're also looking at some collaborative enterprises with some specialists in the field. We've had quite a few engagements with some paleontologists, a few anthropologists that would like to come on board, and a historian. So, and then also looking to scale up, right? Our current business model has been needing to adapt a bit. So we're looking at changing that up. And I've been attending a few accelerator programs for women in business and women in the STEM areas. So those have been extremely beneficial. And then, yeah, I think in about the next year or so, we'll see if a PhD is on the cards for me. If I can squeeze in some time in between the business and some other things. Yeah, it's the future looks bright. It looks extremely
That's great
promising.
to hear. Yeah, absolutely. So, what is it exactly that the company does? We've mentioned grave relocation. What does that, if, for what you can tell us, what does that mean and why it doesn't need to be done?
Okay, so in South Africa, we have a cultural heritage set of laws and regulations that accompany those laws. And when, as I previously mentioned, South Africa is undergoing it's a developing country, and it's going through a lot of developmental changes. Right now, we have a big energy crisis, for example, and we're seeing a lot of development applications insofar as the environment is concerned to implement or to bring in independent power producers. And one of the adverse effects that can come from that is that the land is impacted on, and graves and burial grounds are on the land. So when developers want to use mechanisms to ensure that there is electricity supply, for example, the installation of a pipeline, irrigation for farming, a new mine or an expansion of a mine, there is a law that provides for the protection and conservation of human remains. And that is the National Heritage Resources Act 25 of 1999. And this act it basically says that Section 38 and 36 of that act provide that for the general protection of graves. And this means that there are provisions to ensure that those graves are mitigated against any potential damage, destruction, theft, and so forth. So as part of a mitigation and in those regulations, the relocation of human remains is regulated in that act. And that means that only a qualified and skilled archaeologist may relocate graves. And that is where we come in. So we assist developers to ensure that they comply with those regulations inside that act. And then we also assist families and private individuals in our capacity to identify areas where they do not necessarily have access to burial grounds and graves on private land due to the displacement of peoples in the past and the unfair removal of individuals from their lands at the time due to Group Areas Acts, and these are apartheid laws that were enacted in South Africa. And so what we try to do is then we foster a relationship between the developer and the communities to ensure for the protection of these graves. And that sometimes translates into us having to compile heritage management plans and grave management plans, as well as impact assessments. So these impact assessments, these heritage and archaeological impact assessments, are tools in which we are able to identify the scarce and um, irreplaceable cultural heritage that is on properties or on land that will be earmarked for development, for example. So we would physically, we have a team or myself, field workers that will go out into the field where a prospecting development would take place, and we would survey a field-based on-foot survey of the area and the extent of the area to try and identify cultural resources. And cultural resources include graves and burial grounds, because as per the National Heritage Resources Act, any graves that are older than 60 years and older than 100 years are considered cultural heritage and therefore form part of the national estate. And so there is a specific kind of way in which we handle and treat these human remains. And that includes ethical treatment as well as the analysis of those human remains. So that includes osteological analysis as well as an analysis that includes social and socioeconomic assessment of those cultural resources. So it's quite a technical kind of service offering. But amongst our service offerings, we also include on the not so technical side, we also include a spiritual repatriation process. So a lot of the times to previous developments, for example, the installation of a road or road networks, where graves may have been previously either destroyed or adversely affected upon by the development that may have been either erroneously done and or unethically done, and they are uncovered in the course of that development or have historically been disturbed. We then assist those developers and or those families to at least have a way in which they can represent the and acknowledge those who have passed on, the deceased. We facilitate that process by engaging directly with the families in their language of preference, and we come to an agreement as to how the spiritual and ritual processes need to be done, and in instances where, for example, no mortal remains can be identified. So when we can't find human remains and or the remains have been so negatively impacted on that they are no longer in a state in which we can relocate them, and then this serves as an alternative for the families to at least have some way of providing dignity to those who have passed on. And then our last service offering, which is what we strive to have perhaps in the future enacted into the regulations, is a smart public participation process. So that means wherein cultural heritage resources are identified, perhaps through an impact assessment and or through notification of the developer by the communities, for example, we then liaise directly with communities and interested stakeholders, and that could mean various community groups and forums, trusts, and as well as individuals in the communities, and we assist them to to have a public participation process that will meet the minimum requirements for authorizations for an environmental impact assessment, because heritage and archaeological impact assessments form part of the larger environmental impact assessment. And these impact assessments provide grading significance ratings, as well as the identification of a complete heritage asset register, and with that, mitigation recommendations. And so, this is a full service kind of business, right? We do everything for you as our client, and we ensure that you're compliant at the end of the day, and that the relationship between you and your community that you will be affecting with this development, hampers on the principles of African logic systems. So wherein there is a mutually beneficial relationship fostered around respect of cultural systems, as well as an acknowledgement for individuals in interacting in those spaces. Yeah, that's I think for lack of a better words, that's basically more or less what we do in the business. And then we've got some ad hoc things that we also take on. We work with an organization called the Pretoria Archaeological Club for schools. And what they do is similar to what you've now started doing, is we go out into disimpoverished communities where there are children who are learners in high schools, and that we present to them the kind of career prospects and opportunities in the heritage sector, as well as in the archaeological discipline, as this sector is very underskilled and under-resourced in terms of human resource, so that they could look at pursuing a career in archaeology.
Absolutely. And, for those who are pursuing a career in archaeology, like you say, and, you have experience with telling students this already, what are some tips and recommendations that you have for someone who either wants to follow in a path more specifically like yours, where they're doing something maybe with repatriation or just archaeology in general? What are some recommendations you have?
I think the top three I wish I had when I was looking to get into would be find your people, right? Because have a support structure into your journey, and understand that this is a long road, right? This is a career, or this is a career prospect that will really ground you for the next 10, 20, 30 years. This isn't something that is that should be taken lightly. So really do your research and ensure that the support structures around you are strong enough to carry you, because you will fall. If anyone knows anything about success, is that you have to fail a lot, right?
Yes.
So you have to be ready to make and be bold about this career, and this journey you're on, and don't follow anyone's footpaths, right? Make your own path, carve out your own way,
Yes.
right? Just look at human evolutionary sciences, and it'll show you that for if any time where there's a big bang, then we see change, right? So yeah, that would be my advice. Do your research, find out what do you love in archaeology. I took about 7 years to get to really get my teeth into what is it that I find fascinating. Where does my passion really lie? And then looking to culminate my passion with purpose in this discipline, right? and making
Mm-hmm.
my carving out the career that I've been able to do. Look at, do you want to study fauna, or do you want to do um, paleo sciences, and what does that mean, and what are the career opportunities for you, and how many, how will you structure support in that discourse, right, to sustain you in that industry. Do you like pottery, ceramics? Are you more of collections? And would you like to find yourself in a museum or as a curator, or would you like to, or do your passions and your purposes really like? Are you into regulations and compliance? Would you like to find yourself in authority? Right, in a heritage authority, or something like that. So you really need to check yourself, right, and understand that
Mm-hmm.
obviously things will change, right. As as
Right.
as time moves on, you change, you're affected by your environment and so forth, and look at your circumstances, but also be very realistic, right. Look at the political discourse of where you are. Are you in Africa? What are the kind of socio-economic issues that you're facing? What is your background, and where are you from? Can you foster a solid, sustainable um, career in this discipline? And then be sure to just make sure you get yourself a really good mentor, a really good coach, someone
Mm-hmm.
to kind of hold on to it all, a good lecturer to hold on to when things are not looking so great, and take care of your mental health, right? It can, as a student, as a learner, even as an adult, right? The world kind of throws challenges at you. So yeah, if anything, those are the tips I would give as anyone looking to kind of come into this industry, and be thirsty for knowledge. You really need to love this. You really need to know what you're getting your teeth into, and be aware of kind of some of the pitfalls that others have gone into. So ask questions, and engage with your community, archaeological societies, volunteer, join forums and public platforms, get online, connect with people in your discipline, and look at what opportunities can come from that.
And I think those are some amazing tips and advice that people who are interested in following and getting into the field in such a way should really think and consider. Because, like I said, that's some really solid advice that I've heard from quite a few people. So I think that's some really good tips for people. Um, Now, as we said, you are the first in many ways in what you do in your work. Have there been specific challenges that you face and that you've overcome, and how did you overcome
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, what is life without challenges, right?
them?
Yeah, in my undergraduate, I think I remember being a student, and I had absolutely no funding. I had no money. There was no money to continue my studies. Um,
Hmm.
I had to become extremely creative, and so I fostered really good relationships, and I leaned on a lot of people. I had really good I had a really good master supervisor, who Dr. Nduki Akinlovu. Um, he really took me, under his wing, and you know, assisted me at that time in my masters. But prior to that, yeah, there was absolutely no money, so I had to start, looking at what can I do with what I've got, and what do I have, right? So I realized, look, I have friends, I have family, and there's some fools, um, who can who can provide me with some of the tools that I need to get to where I'm going. And then that meant having to be vulnerable, right? And tell people my situation and my circumstance that unfortunately I've lost the primary breadwinner of my family, and I don't have a means to continue with my studies. I had to then take a year off of my studies and then come back. And when I did come back, I was fortunate enough to secure some funding at that time. And that kind of really carried me through. But then I got more creative, right? I started volunteering, and volunteering led me to my first internship, right? And then from there, I was able to get another internship, and then move my career and build on that. So yeah, that's been one of the biggest challenges in just my academic career. But then in the business, just starting the business, right? So I started Reach Archaeology in at the height of COVID, right? COVID-19 was just destroying the entire world. We're going through a global pandemic. I was 9 months pregnant at the
Wow.
time, and I had I had just was finalizing the last chapters of my master's thesis, and I the contract that I had at this organization I was affiliated with had just expired, and so I had a little bit of savings left. Because of COVID, I didn't have a lot of expenses and so forth, and I got quite good with money at that time because we were just buying essential goods. We're just buying
Right,
essential goods.
right, of course.
So I thought this is the tools that I need. What do I need to start this business? There has to be a way in which I can utilize all that I've learned and monetize that and make a living.
Right,
So
right,
really joining the dots between the academic, learnings and bringing that full circle to be able to make a living. So yeah, starting the business, I think that was the biggest challenge I've faced so far, with the newborn and COVID and everything that could go wrong, going wrong. But one thing I realized was COVID gave me a big opportunity, right? Because we couldn't
right,
be mobile. We couldn't be mobile. We couldn't, move, leave the province, leave your
right,
area, leave
right,
your.
right,
So that meant there was opportunity. So where I was, fortunate enough, not a lot of other practitioners in the industry and were able to kind of, come into the area that I was. And I let that be known to say, look, I understand you're not mobile right now, and you might be facing some critical, deadlines, and you've got turnaround times from people who have, you've got contractual obligations. Having done my research, and I said
right,
I'll be to assist you with a fieldwork component of whatever projects you're doing, because I'm a little bit more mobile, right? In this
right, right.
specific.
Absolutely.
I just noticed that niche, and that kind of got me started. And then I leaned onto my support structures, right? So the networks that I'd made, moving in the industry, the people that I've met, I asked them for support. I said, look, I'm starting out my business. How could you assist us? Where could I get your support, your inputs, advice? Can you mentor me? Can you provide me with coaching? And then I started looking when those lines, those calls got quiet, and things got a bit dark. I thought I need to broaden my horizon. This is a very niche
Hmm.
market, very niche field. Let me see what kind of support I can garner for myself outside of here. And I started, getting creative again and looking at other industries and um, other networks, and capacitating myself in business, and and understanding the role that women have to add to the economy. So those were the big challenges, and overcoming them, it took a lot of time, right? And ensuring that and remembering rather that this too shall pass, right? That these are
Yes,
these are
absolutely.
these are the teething stages, and you kind of have to work your way through them and just build that plane in the sky, right? You're getting on it, and
Absolutely. Yeah.
now we need we need fuel, we need all of these things, and not being afraid. I think being very fearless and bold, and really not taking no for an answer, and questioning, like always seeking that knowledge, has been the biggest benefit, I think, in um, maneuvering those challenges.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I feel the exact same way about, that wanderlust, that needing to find what's over the next horizon and the next, you know, just trying to figure things out is really what drives me as well. So I feel very akin to that. Um, Now, in a change of pace from what we usually do here on the show, I hear that you have some questions for me. So I wanted to give you some time to ask those. So why don't we switch over and I will hand the proverbial host position over to you, and why don't we see where this goes?
Awesome, thanks. I'll keep it brief. I won't go too hard on you. Um, so I think it would be interesting for us to know is, when are you taking this amazing platform from a virtual event to a hybrid event to an in-person event? The streets want to know, when are we all together? It would be such a brilliant thing to just bring everyone together, community. Um, and that's the first question.
That is an awesome question and an awesome place to start. So, frankly, um, I have been looking into funding options for expanding various directions. Um, as far as making it hybrid, I think that begins with the job that I just got, where I'm now teaching anthropology to children and starting to educate on the ideas of, there's no such thing as biological race. We're all one species. We're all together in this. And just by starting with those ideas I mean, these kids are some of them are younger than second grade so far. And then when I get to work with older kids, working actually with, I've done lesson plans about Neanderthals. And it's going to just be really fun. And I think as they start to learn and as they start to spread out, that's actually the beginning of my work becoming hybrid. And then,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have given lectures to a few classes before at university as well as in a few elementary schools. I'm always open to doing that. For anyone who's out there who's listening, you want me to come talk, we'll talk, and we'll see. But I'm also in talks with some people about making some really exciting around the world travels that we'll just see if that happens, where I might be doing some web series. That would definitely be bringing things into the real world. But we'll have to see on how that goes. Just a lot of gears turning. But I'm definitely thinking of expanding things. So people should definitely be on the lookout, and they should definitely be just excited because I'm really excited. And just frankly, right now, the best way to help is I can't do what I want to do without funding. I think we all know that in this field, everything requires funding. Um, and that's really the next big step is learning or finding someone who can help me with that, because as a continuing college student, money is not something that's just flowing into my bank account right now. And I do all of this work completely volunteer based. There's no compensation on my end, so it really. And I'm not looking for that, but I'm just looking for a way to bring it to more people. So that would be the next step.
That's amazing. That's incredible. I actually cannot wait to see. And I'm excited. It's like this, it
Yes, it's
sounds,
going to be great.
the vision, I see it and I believe in it. And I just, I wish you everything but the best and more.
Thank you. Thank you.
My last question would be, what interested you about the profile of the business? What drew you into, allowing us a platform on your channel, and why?
So one reason, and there's quite a few. One, I believe I came across your profile and I read your bio and I read your description, and you came across me as a very intriguing and interesting person who had a very intriguing and interesting job. And it struck me that you were the first, you know, South African person who looked, as we said, everyone else looked different than you. You weren't represented in this field. And it struck me that you broke that mold and that you made a place for yourself and not for other people to come and take roles that you have provided and have allowed people to have, because you took those first steps. And I wanted to promote people who make change in the world. I want to show that, just because it doesn't exist right now, that doesn't mean it won't exist in the future, because change, as you mentioned earlier, is always happening, it's always occurring. We need to embrace it and make the most of it. And then, of course, just the work itself. Um, the work itself, where it's just so important. We call it, in the United States, we call it cultural resource management, and it usually involves Indigenous American remains doing the same thing, kind of what you were describing, where if they're trying to develop a building or a new road or something, if they come across any sort of cultural item, they have to call in um, the CRM people, the cultural resource management people, and they have to do a whole excavation of the site before the developers are allowed to continue. And I was interested in what that process was like in a different country. And I think it really is important that we all understand how important it is to preserve our ancestral connections. I'm so glad that you brought that up and that you mentioned that, because that is what people need to be thinking about. Because, of course, while these people are much more closely related to you and your family and your ancestors than I am, you go far back enough. We are all human. We are all Homo sapiens. These are all our family members, and we should all be caring for remains that we find, and we should be taking the proper care and dignity to show that these were once living beings. And I found that that was very important work you were doing, and I wanted to highlight that. So I hope that answers your question.
It does, above and beyond. And thank you so much again for having me, and allowing us to take over your proverbial microphone. For a second, I really that. I know it's tough having to be interviewed, but I thought it would be interesting for you to get in the hot seat for a bit.
It was fun. Yeah, it was fun for a little bit.
So,
Well, I think, unless you have anything that you would like the audience to know, I think we will let you go. Of course, I'm going to open the floor to you to say anything you want to say to the audience right now. I'll let you have that.
Thanks so much. I just wanted to thank you, Seth. Thank you so much for the amazing work you're doing, and just shining a spotlight. This is one industry that really needs, pioneers like yourself. And please don't think that you're invalidated. You are extremely valuable, and we value all that you do. And please continue this amazing work, and your passion really shows and it shines through. And I wish you all the best with the kids and all of that. And then just to the viewers and the listeners and everyone, please connect with us, right? We're on social media. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're on LinkedIn. We're everywhere. So please connect with us, and we can continue the conversation. And if you have any questions, for us or for myself, you're welcome to pop them in, and we'll be sure to respond to them. And I think maybe just the last note would be to just remember, I think we take a lot of time focusing on the future and not really being present in the now, and even less so just memorializing where we've come from, right? So please take a second for yourself. If you are in this field, look at where you've come from, and remember that. I think it's extremely important to validate, your journey, and look back with enthusiasm and with pride. So yeah, that's about it from my side. We are Reach Archaeology Consulting, and hopefully we'll be connecting at another time.
Absolutely. And just real quick before we let everyone go, I just want to say I'll put all of the social media links in the description of the video, so anyone watching will be able to quickly access them. And that's it, folks. So I just want to thank everyone for coming along. We're going to have this video posted in a little bit. I'm trying to keep to a schedule now these days instead of posting all my videos at once. So we will see you guys soon. And just if you want more videos like this, please like and subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye, everyone.